So that goes way back. I think my earliest desire, career-wise, I remember taking one of those quizzes, like the Myers-Briggs test type thing when I was in elementary school, and then saying, well, you're going to be a photographer. And I had no interest in photography at all. But the second thing was to be a teacher. And it got kind of planted in my head at an early age that I wanted to do that. It felt like it was something I really enjoyed. I used to like to volunteer when I was in 6th grade. We had buddies in the building. You'd go down to the 1st grade classroom and you'd help that younger person out, whether it was learning math or reading, whatever it might be. That really stuck. And so I pursued that path academically through higher education and got out into teaching in public education, and really got kind of hit in the face with a 2x4 when I realized that there was a lot of things that I never really thought about, that are inhibitive toward the teaching process. There was kind of a teach to the test mentality a lot of times, and that wasn't my style. I really enjoyed more the mentorship part of it, and so I found myself gravitating more and more toward coaching as my primary joy, my primary passion, because I really felt like I could help young people a lot better, a lot more natural, I guess. So it felt more organic, and so had some really good mentors as I was coming up through track as an athlete, and they were very encouraging. They felt like I had a niche for it, and so I've always been very conservative, and I was afraid to take that leap and try and go and do a grad assistantship and whatnot. But it was through those older gentlemen. They were all 30, 40-year veterans of coaching. They were like, Eric, you got to do it, and so they really pushed me over the edge, and that was how I got to the point where it became a career choice for me. This is an unfair question. There's way too many of them. I almost think about this categorically, like, what was your favorite UAA championship memory, national championship memory, that sort of thing. So you have to forgive me. I'm going to give you more than one. But the probably the one that sticks out as being my all-time favorite was the 2017 UAA Outdoor Championship. We had an athlete at the time, Nate Wayner, who, when people think about his legacy in the program, they think about a dominant sprinter. But what really has always hung around in my mind as being his greatest contribution, I guess, to team culture and team history was that he was the epitome of a walk-on. He had very little talent when he got here, and he thought he was a distance runner. He was doing 5Ks and running cross country and everything. And once we really started to realize that he was the competitor that he was, and he had some skills that were undeveloped, we drove into that hard. And every time I told him he couldn't do something, he would go and do it. Or when I doubted him, I shouldn't say I didn't tell him he couldn't do it, but I would say, it's a tall order, that's going to be tough. I've never seen somebody do it. And then sure enough, he would go do it. And so that meet, we'd already got to the point in our coach-athlete relationship where I knew the way his mind worked, and he knew that I was going to stoke the fire a little bit by telling him that he wasn't going to be able to do whatever the order was for that meet. And so I did. I told him, I said, this is something that nobody in our program has ever done. He ended up winning he ended up winning the 400, the 200, and then he was on the winning 4x1 and 4x4 team. And probably the iconic moment that everybody remembers from that meet was that we were probably in a 3-way tie for first place when he got the baton in the 4x1. And it was an icy cold Chicago afternoon in late April. And it looked like he caught a breeze. Like, it literally looked like a gust came off of Lake Michigan and just shoved him down the track. And everybody went bananas. Because it really was a testament to his skill set, his desire to compete and win. And he wasn't a 100-meter guy. He's the conference championship. There's conference champion in the 4 and the 2, not the 1. But he certainly had the capability. And because I wouldn't let him do the triple and run the open 100, he had to prove to himself and everybody else in the stadium that he was the fastest man on the track on that given weekend. And so it was just so much fun to be a part of that. And so it always sticks out as being my favorite memory. If I were to go two other ones that really stuck out, Cassandra Laus winning a national title will always stick out in my mind. Again, we've belabored her story, so many times on our social media and whatnot. So I won't go into too much detail there, but just the perfect culmination, an athlete who did it right the whole way through. But then the other one I want to mention is Anant Suresh. When he was a senior, his career was almost the Homeric tale. He had the ups and downs. He had surgeries and challenges with all aspects of life. That I watched him overcome these for 4 years. And his senior year, he had a job lined up, and so it was like the road was clear ahead. He dedicated himself so aggressively that single year to becoming the conference champion in the triple jump, and it was a tall order. I mean, he was getting his butt kicked by 3 or 4 other guys in the league. His junior year, he was terrible. No offense, Anant, but he was getting beat down. And so seeing him rise to that level his senior year, and then winning a conference championship on his 6th and final jump in front of his whole team down in Atlanta at Emory, sun shining, beautiful place to be for a track championship. I'll never forget that. I'll never forget just how magical he made that when he owned it. I mean, that is the moment that every track athlete envisions for themselves, and how few ever pick it from the tree. He did it. And so that's a real special one for me too. So that'd be my 3. Nate Wayner, Cassandra Laus, Anant Suresh. Fantastic stories. This is another one where it's an unfair question. There have been so many people that you want to give some heavy credit to. I'm smart, so I'm going to go number 1, my wife. I definitely would not be here today at Case Western Reserve if it wasn't for meeting her and having her support to pursue being a head coach in college athletics. So she's a big one. In terms of actual career mentors, Bill Taraski, Dr. Bill Taraski, he was my head coach when I was an athlete at Walden Wallace College way back when. And then he became my first boss. And this is a guy who most people who knew him, he's very iconic. His image, his mannerisms, everything about him was this kind of larger than life sort of personality. And the thing that I will always say had the deepest impact on me from him was how organized he was. He seemed like he was, falling asleep sometimes in his chair, and people be like, oh God, this old guy, he doesn't know what's going on. He knew everything that was going on. He always knew what was going on. He knew before everybody else did. He'd been around the sport for so long and done so many things at such a great level. He just knew. And so but when I would ask him the question, I'd say, how did you know that was going to happen or whatever? He wouldn't make a joke out of it and be like, oh, I'm just smarter than everybody else, although sometimes he would claim that. But he would always say it's about being organized. It's attention to detail. He was very big on, making sure that when student athletes got an itinerary and a meet schedule, that it was by the minute, and that you followed that, and that there were no surprises. And when you'd stay on the road, you'd always stay in the same hotel if possible, the same company, Hampton Inn or whatever it might be, because there was consistency there. And he was a big proponent of that being the cornerstone of a good program, is that you want consistency day to day, week to week, year to year. That's where good tradition is rooted. And so he was the monster of impact in terms of how I think about what I do for a living. It was about helping young people for him. As much as winning was important to him, I would always think to him first as being a mentor of young men and women. Countless people that he has danced with at their weddings, or that he's given away. I mean, he's everyone's dad. He's always been that. So, that type of a person is something that I think all of us in coaching aspire to be. We want to be that kind of figure to young people, and so he's my big one. He's the cornerstone for sure. I think it's changed in a lot of ways. When I was younger, I remember doing everything. I remember that whether it was CYO or whether it was City League, it was all comers, open rec kind of athletics, at least during elementary school and into middle school. And then once you started getting into more organized, it got a little bit more serious, but I didn't feel like there was as much travel at that time. Like now it seems like everything's a travel league, and there's a lot of money in it. I think that's the biggest thing I see, is that youth sports, there's a huge amount of money and everybody wants to do it. When I was younger, I feel like people kind of put themselves into boxes a little bit more readily. They said, all right, well, I'm athletic, so I'm going to go do athletics. Or no, I really enjoy, working with Legos and like pre-engineering kind of things, and so I'm going to go do that. And now it seems like everybody's doing it. You know what I mean? Whether it's youth football, youth baseball, the number of teams that are out there, the number of contests. I mean, you can drive by any ball diamond or any football field any day of the week. Obviously, pandemic, a little different, but that's probably the biggest change I've seen is the level of involvement and money that's going into it. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, but I do think that there was much more of a kind of sandlot element to sports when I was growing up. I feel like there was less organization. It was more pickup, and it was much more aggressive. I think there was, someone would always leave with a bump or a bruise and some tears maybe, and then it was just I don't know how to describe it, but it always felt like it was a little bit more on the organic, free-flowing competition level, as opposed to now it's organized and you've got your champion and your second place trophy and your fifth place trophy and all the other things. I remember it being that you lost and you had to go get better. That was it. So that's how I think it's changed. A lot more money and a lot more of that for sure. So when I worked at my previous institution, we had the privilege / curse, I guess I could say, of hosting 2 national championship meets in the same academic year. So we hosted cross-country nationals for NCAA Division III in fall of 2009, and then in spring of 2010 we hosted the outdoor championship for track and field. And it had never been done before. There was, like, regardless of division, there was never a university or institution that did 2 championships in the same year. But with a lot of help from the Greater Cleveland Sports Commission, and again, talking to Coach Tarasky, his brain, he had hosted multiple national meets before in in track and field. So he had this incredible amount of knowledge for doing this, and being a part of that, both in cross country and in outdoor track, it was incredible. The things I learned about how our sport functions at the national level, and all the personalities at play in the executive committees and whatnot, the rules committees, and it was such a great exposure for a young coach. I want to say I was 26 or 27, and really that was kind of a springboard for me into not only wanting to become a head coach more, but also believing I could do it. It gave me a lot of skills and whatnot that I didn't even realize existed prior to doing that. And being able to watch some of our own athletes competing on their home track for All-America, and at that time, that year, 2010, I think one of our athletes was second in the nation in the women's steeplechase, and just a really cool experience. Weather actually held out for us. It was May in Ohio, so who knew? We got 3 good days of sunshine, and it was just fantastic. And in another kind of interesting way, I think it really cemented my sense of this was my career. This is what I was going to do for the rest of my life. Was I was going to pursue a career in track and field coaching collegiately, because of all the things that I got to be a part of in that process that whole year. Lost a lot of hair, got real skinny at the end there, but it was well worth it. It was a great experience. Again, I could probably go in a couple different directions, but my athletes know that I'm a sharer. I probably say too much from time to time, but the one thing that a couple of them know about me, but not a lot of them do, is that before I got into competitive track and field, I grew up playing football, basketball primarily, and then right about 5th grade, I kind of got a little bit off the beaten path of athletics, and I found this 4-wheeled toy called a skateboard, and I really committed my athleticism to that for a good 6-7 years, and it was my secret. If my track coaches knew I did this in my spare time, they would have killed me. Football coaches too. And so all through high school, I was kind of hiding this other self that all of my friends knew about, all of the other athletes knew about, but the coaches didn't know that Schmuhl was riding that 4-wheel toy around town and jumping off stairwells and whatnot and just doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And what I loved about it was that skateboarding to me was about picking yourself up. Like you fell more often than you landed tricks. And so, you got all these bumps and bruises and war stories to tell down the road. But the art of it was that you always got up, and you went back and tried it again. And so I had a deep love for that. And then once I got to college, it kind of petered off. And then post-collegiately, the body wouldn't tolerate it anymore. Don't tell Tony Hawk. I know he's like 50 and still doing all this stuff. But that's something that not a lot of people know about me, that I loved it, still love it, still pay attention to it a little bit. This summer, my 6-year-old got her first skateboard and rolled down the street. And so that was kind of a nice moment for us. But yeah, that's a big part of who I was growing up. The closest friends I've ever had in my life are people who I met and kept through the skateboarding world and whatnot. And so yeah, that's the big one. That's the big one that people don't know that.